Hi, and welcome to this video on working with light. And here we're dealing with material which we have touched on in other videos, um, but we're really focusing in on light, and uh, we're working in the context of the whole action on this edit. Um, and you join me as I have reached this point where I have been through my heal and frequency separation stages of my edit, and I'm now just about to begin working on my light folder, and I've just isolated this section of the layers panel so we can concentrate on this. One thing that you may like to have a look at when you're working with light is the histogram, because this gives us a sort of graphical representation of the actual distribution of light in the image. And so what we're really seeing is shadows to the left, mids in the center, and highs on the right. And you can really, I think, appreciate this if you set your source to adjustment composite on the histogram. If I was to just raise the RGB level quite dramatically, when you look at the histogram, you can see how that has caused the histogram has shifted quite substantially over in the direction of the highlights, and obviously in the image is now the highlights are now very, very pronounced. And similarly, if I was to pull my curve downwards, it's an excessive amount, and you look at the histogram now, you can see how we've changed the distribution heavily into the shadows to the left of the histogram, as compared to what we started out with. So just something to be aware of. The histogram may be useful to you in thinking about what we're doing here. But anyway, I'll just set that back for now, and I'll just switch that off for now. So in looking at my image, what have we got? Well, it's a portrait image shot once again with natural light, in an urban setting. So we've got a really nice sort of highly textured, characterful background from this brick wall, and we also have this bokeh effect on the left side, which is caused by the shallow depth of field in the capture. It's quite a good image to begin with. The distribution of light is quite good. It's quite good focus. It's a nice capture. But at this stage of the edit, what I'm really asking myself is thinking in terms of what can I do with the distribution of light in the image to favor the subject, to enhance the subject, to make the subject pop, give her more impact, give the whole image more impact. So, and I'm thinking about within the layers I have in my action, kind of shows the way I think about it. I have my layer called scene, which I think of as being, where I want to sort of adjust light across the whole of the image, the whole scene, sort of including the background and the subject. I've got a layer called face because I may want to work specifically on light in relation to the model's face, which of course is the sort of main focus of interest. I've got eyes because I would normally want to home in on the model's eyes and do some work on those. And I also have hair because I'm going to want to, I think about treating the light on the model's hair as a kind of separate thing that I'm going to want to focus on. So, what's the first thing we do? Well, in terms of artistic intention, I think we're in a similar place, which is that we want to, we want to make the subject stand out a bit more, and the distribution of light is, I suppose, fairly sort of even, particularly across the left-hand side of the image and the subject, although it is in fact brighter in the mids here. So I'm going to see if I can reduce the luminosity of the background, and I'm just going to pull my RGB curve on the scene layer down to some kind of reasonable point. And although this does appear to affect colour, which is unavoidable to some extent, again, just sort of emphasize that I'm really not worrying about colour here. I'm only worrying about luminosity or light. So let's say that I think that's a good place. And here I've focused on really looking at my background and how my background is going to look. Now I'm going to use my curves layer adjustment mask technique with my black brush selected, and I'm going to select an opacity of about in the middle, fairly low flow. 23 is probably okay, around the 20s, and then I'm just going to brush onto the subject, and I'm restoring the luminosity of the original, of the base image, the underlying image. When I'm working with the hair, I'm probably going to drop opacity a little bit because I don't want to. I want to really, if I can, avoid kind of haloing effects. But I know that I'm going to be have a separate layer where I'm going to work on the hair as well. So. And I just need to go around carefully, just looking carefully at my image, just to make sure that miss any areas out. And I can refer to my my graphic on the mask. Gives me a clue if I can see that I've missed an area out. Okay, and now if I switch that adjustment off, we go back to the original, and if I switch it on again, you can see the effect of what I've done, which has already caused a much more sort of dramatic difference between the luminosity of the subject and the background. And that word dramatic may alert us to the fact that it's too much. We may not want quite as much as that. So as always, we will normally zero out the adjustment and then just feed it back in. And I mean, sometimes we want dramatic, sometimes we want subtle. I mean, it is, as always, it's a sort of artistic decision. But I think I'm going to come in at about 80 on that. It seems to me to be about right for that. And so now, if I consider working specifically on the model's face, so I've really been focusing on the background itself in the scene layer. Here I'm going to think more explicitly about the subject. And I can just experiment with raising the luminosity. I can push up here in the mid-tones. I can push up more in highlights or more in the shadows. And I'm just looking for a level. Let's try that, and let's just zoom in a bit. So what I'm trying to achieve is I want her face to have plenty of impact, but I obviously don't want to sort of overdo it. I mean, if I get to the point where I'm sort of blowing the highlights, obviously that's no good. So, but I think if somewhere around here in the mid seems to be good to me. And as always, zooming out will give me a good idea of what's going on. So let's go with that. And now we can invert that mask to hide the adjustment, and using X to select the white brush, and again with opacity and flow layers fairly restrained here, about 46 and 25 I've got at the moment. I can now, with my brush, I can paint this adjustment initially just onto the model's face, because here this is one of these situations where I'm going to want to adjust in concentric circles around her face. So having done that, I'll just switch that off, just check. Now I'm going to drop my opacity, and I'm just going to go around the outside of the face, because what I'm really trying to do is blend this change in to the rest of the image, so that it doesn't look too sort of artificial, or it doesn't look as if it doesn't really fit with the rest of the image. And I'll drop opacity back again, and I'll just go around in a slightly wider circle, just raising luminosity. Again, all in the interest of blending my change in. And again, just to refer you back to the mask, the mask gives us a admittedly fairly small representation of what brushstrokes we've applied. So I think that looks okay, but once again, I'm going to just drop the opacity of that right back to where we were. And I think this wants to be fairly subtle because in the original capture we have quite good light on her face, so we don't need to sort of go crazy here. But we do want to give more impact. We want to really draw the viewer's eye to the model's face. So I'm thinking I'll leave that around the mid-60s. Okay, and as always, I can come back and adjust these. I can kind of take another look at it and so on. But I think we're sort of broadly on the right lines here. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is work on the eyes, and we're going to want to raise the luminosity on her eyes. So what I do is I just raise the curve, and here I'm not really worried about the rest of the image. I'm only looking at her eyes now, and I'm just really only trying to think about luminosity of the iris and the pupil here. So let's try that. We'll mask that out, and then bring our brush down to the right kind of size. Maybe around 50% opacity would be fine for this. And then I'm just going to paint the luminosity change just onto the eyeball here. And similarly on this eye. And if I zoom out, I need to just check that whenever we're working on the eye, we really need to, just sort of keep looking at it, and because what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to get plenty of impact for the eyes, because it's very important that we do achieve that, but we also don't want to end up with the model looking like some kind of alien. We don't want it to look sort of realistic as well. So again, if we drop that right back, and there's on the opacity slide, there's usually a point where you can see it kind of pops into view at 60%. So let's try and push up a little bit from that. Let's go around 70%. And then if we zoom out and try just switching that off and on again, you should be able to see the difference we've made there. And of course, subsequently, we're going to be working on the eye color as well, so which is going to give the eye more impact. But here, as previously mentioned, we're really only concerned with luminosity in the eyes on this layer. So we might decide that will do. And now we're just going to focus in on our hair layer, and just see, really experiment with again, we can just experiment with the curve and just see, you know, it's easy to overdo this. We don't want to do that. But we can just mess around with the curve until we hit something which we think is giving us more impact in the hair, without kind of being too much or going crazy. So let's try that, and again we'll invert the mask, and again we can begin to brush some more light into the model's hair. And in a portrait like this, where the model has got sort of long hair, she's got plenty of it, and it's a rather lovely colour to begin with. You know, we've got plenty to work with, and we can certainly we can certainly hope to get more impact for our image from the model's hair, which looks really good. I might decide in certain places, like here, I'm going to just make that a little bit brighter. So certain places where you can like really appreciate the color and texture of the hair, those may be good places to add a little bit more light, you know, where it kind of looks interesting and characterful. And I can also, here I'm just spotting in some highlights rather than just brushing it continuously. I'm just dropping in some additional highlights. And so now let's pull out, and if we switch that off and on again, we can see that we've actually made quite a significant difference to the luminosity in the hair. And as always, we can pull that right back and just bring it in to the point where, you know, once again, where it's a subtle enhancement which gives more impact, but it isn't sort of too much, it isn't overblown. And of course, as always, where we feel that the change we're making is kind of blending in with the rest of the image. And so at this point, so we've worked through scene, face, eyes, and hair layers, and we've what I've tried to show you is how we're sort of working on adjusting luminosity on different parts of the image. And now we can, because we have our various light layers in the light folder, we can also experiment with what happens when we can, for example, zero out all of the light changes we've made. This is taking us right back to the beginning. And we can adjust the opacity of the whole set of changes that we've made, which may be useful if you feel, for example, that you have, as I am feeling at the moment, that I think I'm slightly think I'd like to just pull that back, pull everything back. And I can switch the whole folder off. That's where we started. This is where we are at the moment. Yeah, and I think that's better. I think with all the changes full on, I just felt that it wasn't blending quite as nicely as I wanted. So I've just kind of still looking at it. I'm still pulling the slider around till I get happy. I think maybe about, I think we can get away with 90. I think certainly I am always on this sort of constant struggle between the forces of visual impact and the forces of sort of subtlety and restraint. And this is something you have to decide for yourself. But I think possibly visual impact is the one to focus on most of the time. But as always, the whole point and hopefully the thing you will learn from going through these kind of edits with me is that every image is different. We can't. Even though we have our action and we have our sort of various things that we tend to do, we can't really ever produce a sort of one size fits all editing solution. And we have to remain sensitive to the particular image we're working on and what it needs. And so in this case, actually, it now occurs to me that I'm going to actually make another scene layer because I want to drop this back even further to about there. And again, just sort of illustrating really that although we have our action is very useful, there is really nothing at all to stop us from deciding to add additional layers. So here I'm just painting the subject to bring back the subject luminosity, having decided to reduce the background luminosity even further. Just because I feel that in terms of the tone and atmosphere and mood of the whole image, that works better for me. And I suppose perhaps we should remember that it's an urban image, so we're depicting the model, we're showing the model in the real world, as it were, where we often have this sort of fairly good mix of sort of light and shadow and different tones. And we should remain in sympathy with that in our edit. So if I switch that off, so again you can see, and if I just drop that back, zoom right out is often, if you look at a kind of smaller representation of your image, it's often extremely helpful. Because if you look at it zoomed right down, to some extent you're getting an impression of the actual impact of the image on the viewer. If we bring it up, I'm just using the Control plus, Control minus, or Command plus, Command minus shortcut keys here, which I find is the best way to move in and out. And so that looks better to me. And I might decide now that, if you recall, I dropped the whole folder down to 90%. I might decide to play with that again. Yeah, I've just adjusted that a little bit. So I'm actually getting a bit more of what's in the folder now. Oops. So that's it, really. Just just to sort of sum up what we're doing here in the context of the action and in the context of the overall edit, is we're just taking this whole folder, this whole section, where we just worry about light in the image, the distribution of light, worry about the luminosity of different elements in the image, such as the background and the subject, and we try to arrive at a set of changes which really enhance the image in a sympathetic way. I'm just going to snapshot now, and if I call this light changes, then I can, when I go back to the original base image, that now seems like quite a dramatic change we've made to the image, and that's now is a good moment to sort of can really appreciate what we've done and the extent of the change we've made, and also decide whether we think we've improved it, or we've improved it in the right way. So anyway, there we are, and that's it for now. And in the next video, we're going to move on to the next folder in the action, where we're going to do something similar, but we're going to focus on color. So I look forward to talking to you about color, and bye for now.